This video may not be for everybody, it's not easy content to consume, it's rather a deep dive into one of the particular aspects of NIO and the business model. But I do actually believe that in times like these, when we have lots of volatility in the markets and also corrections, that it really helps to have a good understanding, and this actually results then also in conviction into a company in order to stay focused on what is the inherent potential of a company. That being said, this doesn't mean that the content of this video is meant to say like this will definitely happen or this potential will of course be unlocked. No, this is just some theoretical discussion of what could actually happen. But I think it's quite something interesting and exciting, and it has to do with, once again, battery swapping, which is a controversial topic to say the least. So some people hate it for the additional cost and the overhead that it creates. Then it has the aspects of what are the benefits from a customer perspective, but also even on the technical side, like the upgradability. And of course, there's also a business model aligned with it. And so let's dive into one of these potentials. And this video was inspired by this WeChat article, which talks in very much depth and length about NIO's prospects of breaking into the energy market as a vehicle manufacturer, but also having those battery assets not only in the cars, but also through the swap stations. Because you may already know that only NIO by now as a premium manufacturer has the capabilities to swap out batteries. Now CATL is entering the same business model with the mass market and their own CATL battery swap system. Because if you are new to EVs or NIO, then you might think that the battery swap is just a way to actually replenish the battery power in a faster way, to have a fast access to a fully charged battery, so don't have to wait for, let's say, slow charging or even supercharging the vehicles. No, there is much more to it actually, to battery swapping, notably also the upgradability, so having the idea of being able to have different battery sizes that can be added to the car or latest battery technology. But it seems there may be even another benefit here, and a big problem here, or rather a trend, is that most countries are now trying to shift their energy production to mostly renewables. And actually China is kind of a leader in this game. I remember when I've worked for the German Chamber of Commerce in Beijing, that was 10 years ago, we've been actually doing all of those initiatives, the government initiatives for expanding renewables in China as well, also with the big help of German technology back then. And China is really rapidly expanding this, but there are issues with that because it's making your grid, the electricity production, much more volatile, maybe similar actually to today's stock markets. So you have ups and downs because of course the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. And so you have phases where the electricity production is going up and spiking, but not all of it can actually be used in the grid because there is no demand for it. And on the other hand, you have phases where you may have more demand but not actually the same energy production in the system right now. And this can actually really stress the grid. And actually one of the arguments even against EVs is that because there will be more people at certain periods of time charging, this could cause blackouts. This is one of the arguments that, let's say, people who don't like electric mobility are bringing up and saying, we cannot fully shift to a full EV fleet worldwide, otherwise we will have issues with our power grid. Now, wherever there are problems, there are usually also smart entrepreneurs trying to solve them, and so there is an opportunity with that. And what you see here is the price of electricity in the intraday market, and that's actually in Germany. So you see here from 1 in the night till 24 o'clock, you see that there are different prices and peaks up to 70 euros per megawatt hour of electricity and down to 20 euros per megawatt hour of electricity. So at different times the cost of energy can be different, and that's of course driven by supply and demand, which can change during the day, but also during certain seasons during the year. And I would expect that this kind of volatility is actually on the rise the more that we are shifting globally to renewable energy systems that are not based on nuclear power plant productions, because in contrary to such power plants, there will be these kind of peak times and lower periods. So what I think NIO could do, and where they're actually moving towards to, is that they can use those arbitrages between high prices and low prices and kind of trade around this, and using the battery swap stations but also their vehicle fleet as a way of balancing the grid. And so during peak times of energy production, they should actually be able to buy energy at a cheaper price and then store it in the batteries of the battery swap stations and their fleet. And at times where actually there is demand in the grid, and people, because of this demand, are willing to pay higher prices, then they should be able to use the fleet in order to help the grid access some of those energy that is stored in the batteries, and thereby also making these optimizations. Now the question is this lucrative? Could this be an interesting business for NIO? And I've just done this very quick napkin case here, and so please excuse it's not perfectly formatted, but I'll put it into my NIO business case valuation sheet that you can download on my Patreon. And let's walk you through it quickly. So I've assumed the average battery in NIO's swap stations are 90 kilowatt hours. So of course they have some 70 kilowatt hours, some 100 kilowatt hours, some of them are going to be 150 kilowatt hours in the future. And so I said, well, maybe it's 90 on average. A battery swap station can hold 13 of these batteries, and so we could calculate with a throughput, a daily throughput of around 16 megawatt hours based on 90 kilowatt hours batteries that are exchanged in a battery swap station at a 60% utilization per day, so they can do more than 300 swaps per day. So I'm calculating here with around 180 batteries that go through a battery swap station per day and being fully charged to 90 kilowatt hour. So in the German energy market, where you get a megawatt hour between 30 and 60 euros, as I've shown in the graph before, that would cost you between 500 euros to 1,000 euros per day to actually charge all these batteries. And so there is this 500 euros that you can potentially save if you are just charging at the lowest rate in comparison to actually charging at the highest rate. And what I'm assuming here is that of these 500 euros arbitrage here, NIO will be able to capture 30% by optimizing their demand and supply with battery swap stations through some algorithms, purchasing the energy at times where it's cheaper versus supplying the grid with energy at times where the energy cost is actually higher, so basically selling it into the system. So that would result into 150 euros per day saved for a battery swap station. And so of course this runs 365 days per year, so that's roughly 50,000 euros in potential savings there. And then of course we're going to have more than just one station. NIO is operating currently 800. So let's say in an average country in the future where NIO will be in, they have around 500 stations deployed. That would add up to 26 million euros in savings over a year. And potentially for the 4,000 stations that they want to build out in total, that would be 212 million in annual savings, just by being smart about handling the energy cost here. Now this is just for the battery swapping station, but what if NIO users are actually also participating, meaning if they are at home and they have a home charging equipment, or if they are somewhere in a public charger and they allow that their plugged-in car is actually participating in this kind of energy trading, what could this look like? So once again, the average battery size is assumed here with around 90 kilowatt hour. And then what if we have 300,000 cars in the fleet, plus 10,400 batteries in the 800 stations, assuming we have 800 stations and each of them carries 13 batteries. Versus, let's look some years into the future where NIO's fleet will be around 3 million cars and 52,000 batteries are actually in the swap stations. And I'm also assuming here that for the home charging time, 35% of the fleet is actually at home and plugged in and part of this vehicle-to-grid system here. And careful here, these are only assumptions. They could be totally higher or lower, but we know that actually more than 90% of the time cars are being unused and they are possibly standing around somewhere. Let's say a bulk of the users has access to a home charger and then participates in this while the car is not being used. And well, some of them are of course in use and some are not being used. So that's how I come down to this rough number here of 35%. Now let's do the math here for this kind of an ecosystem where we have the smaller fleet with the 300,000 vehicles and a swapping utilization of again 60%, while assuming also the 35% of the home chargers being plugged to the vehicle to grid versus the same also for the 3 million larger fleet. So again, if we're assuming here that 30% of this energy trading volume here can be optimized through algorithms, that would result in potential savings for the smaller fleet of around 200,000 euros per day and for the larger fleet of around 1.4 million. And on an annual basis, that would result into 73 million with a fleet similar to the current size or what we will have by the end of this year versus till if NIO grows bigger to a fleet of 3 million of more than 500 million annually. And so while this is of course just a napkin case and many of these assumptions could be off a little bit here, this is to illustrate that there seems to be some inherent potential in this idea that NIO could actually become a player in the energy market. And actually what I found here is that NIO is hiring a data scientist for power trading. They mention here NIO Power is a mobile internet-based power solution with extensive networks for battery charging and battery swap facilities. Enhanced by Power Cloud, it offers power system services for chargeable, swappable and upgradable batteries with power services catering to all scenarios. We are looking for a data scientist power trading. In this role, you will become a member of the NIO Power Europe team. Based on our EV battery and charging swap stations, you will be helping to find the best trading strategies for various types of power markets such as the spot market, future market and balancing market. So this is telling me that NIO also seems this kind of a potential, and even in Europe, so the European energy market, which I used as an example here with Germany with its high energy prices, but maybe other countries will actually face similar issues with the swap to renewables. China is doing that in a big way. I'm not exactly sure of the Chinese energy prices. This may differ from country to country. However, it seems like there is some benefit towards tackling this issue here. And I would also argue that NIO would be the only one who would be able to do that, because all of the other EV companies that are not able to swap batteries, they wouldn't want to get in this kind of a business. And the reason for that is quite simple, because with all of the other companies, the car owners are actually also the battery owners, and they will have very little incentive to make their car being plugged into the grid and also maybe just receiving some little cents or euros there in order to be able of this. Plus on top of that, there will be more battery degradation because of the unloading and loading of the vehicle. And well, if you own the battery, you certainly don't want to do that. However, with NIO, that's different, because they have the battery asset management company which actually owns the batteries. So it is a service that is actually managing the batteries on the behalf of the users, taking care of the battery health. And so NIO Power is not only helping to manage the batteries as an asset in terms of the longevity and the health of the battery, but also can become a very important part of this kind of a demand management and using smart algorithms in order to be part of this whole energy system there. And on top of that, because NIO has the NIO app and the NIO coins, which is a kind of a currency within the NIO system that you can use, for example, for purchasing goods in the NIO app and e-commerce. This can actually be some incentive that the company can give to their users in order to, let's say, keep the car plugged and be part of this whole energy ecosystem and a management system that is managed externally by the battery asset management company, a NIO Power there. But the user will get some rewards in the NIO app and doesn't have to rely on being part of the system and making some money on its own. And so my summary would be that it seems like NIO has been thinking this through quite some time and seeing some merits there. Well, let's see if this will be actually a viable business and if this will actually also help to offset some of the higher costs and the overhead of battery swapping in general, and how the benefits are perceived within the stakeholders of NIO users, the energy companies, the grid providers, and also NIO as a EV company there. But the bottom line here definitely must be that there seems to be a larger scale of costs that can be saved, and also that NIO is much more than just a car company, but actually a energy management company with NIO Power there. So I hope you enjoyed this more deep research video here. Let me know down in the comments where you see flaws and where you think it's exciting or not, and how viable this is gonna be. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.